Okay guys, we're gonna be talking about how to start your ceramic pinch pot project. So when you start, you should have your sketch out in front of you, just so you kind of have your plan in mind. I went ahead and labeled this, so the body of this unicorn is what the pinch pots will be made out of. So there's my first pinch pot and there's my second. The other things on here, these are attachments. So those are things that I'm gonna build separately and put onto my piece later on. This is the finished product right here. So you can see this is the pinch pot and inside is hollow. And then the head and the horn and the tail, those are all attachments. So what we're gonna be doing, each of you is gonna get a ball of clay to start out with. As we progress through the project, I'll give you guys more as you need, but we're just gonna start with just one ball of clay. So what you're gonna do is break this in half. You can either cut it or just rip it with your hands. And you're gonna be rolling these into spheres. All of you should have a tablecloth down in front of you when you do this, so you don't get clay on the table. They don't have to be perfect, but you don't want a ton of lumps and bumps. So you can either roll in your hands or you can roll on the table. Keep in mind, the more that you mess with your clay, the drier it's gonna get. So if you're just playing around with it because it's fun, your clay is gonna get really dry. So now that I have two sphere shapes, I'm gonna pinch the middle. So I'm gonna put my thumb inside of the clay, and I'm gonna take my outside fingers, so like my pointer finger, my middle finger, my ring finger, and I'm gonna start to gently pinch. And each time I pinch the clay, I'm rotating. So my thumb's inside, pinch, rotate, pinch, rotate, pinch, rotate. And what you're gonna see happen is this pinch pot starts to open up into a hollow shape. So I would do the same thing with my other piece of clay so then I can get two hollow forms. And you should end up with something like this. So both of these are hollow and they're ready to be put together. Now, depending on what your object is, you may have to shape them differently. Like if my piece, let's say I'm designing something that I want to sit on the table and stand up by itself, I would need a flat bottom right here. So I would just gently tap the base of this on the table to get a flatter edge. If your clay walls are uneven, maybe they're pinched too thin, what you can do is gently tap this on the table to get flatter clay walls here. If your walls are too thin, then your piece is not gonna come together. So I'm gonna tap both of these along the table. If you ever need to make your piece wider, I like to use the palm of my hands and then my fingers to kind of shape it a little wider. If you wanna make your piece skinnier, you can take your hands, and this is called collaring, where you're bringing it in just a little bit to make your pinch pot a little thinner. So now that I have two hollow pinch pots, I may want to smooth out any lumps before I attach them. So the way you do that, you're going to take some slip. Each table will have a little orange caddy. The slip's going to be, it almost looks like mud, so it's really watery. You're going to take a paintbrush and just gently put a little bit of slip on your piece. If you overwater your piece, it can actually cause cracks, or it can make your clay really thin. So make sure you don't put too much water. Then I'm going to be taking a metal rib tool, and I'm going to use this to smooth out my clay walls. I like to do this before I put my piece together because it's sturdier to do it now than when it's a hollow shape. You can also just use your fingers if you want. You don't have to use the tools. So I'm just getting rid of any kind of lumps, cracks, anything that I don't want on my final piece. So once I've smoothed out both of my pinch pots, I need to put them together to make a solid form, because right now they're just two halves. So what I'll do is I'm going to do something called slipping and scoring. You guys have two tools that you could use for this. So you could use your needle tool, which is a sharp tool with a needle on the end, or you could use one of your wooden tools with like texture on the end. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my tool And I'm making a bunch of rough marks. These are called your score marks. And the reason we have to do this is it provides friction for your piece so the two pinch pots will stick together. If the surface is too smooth, they're going to fall apart later on. So now that I've scored both of my edges, I'm going to take some slip and we're just going to brush some slip along the score marks. This is why it's called slipping and scoring. Now, before I put these together, if your piece is kind of flimsy and you're worried it's going to cave in, what some people like to do is put a little bit of paper towel in there just to keep it stable. This paper towel will burn up in the kiln, so you don't need to worry about it. It's not going to cause any harm to your piece. So now I have them both scored and slipped. I'm going to put them together. You want to make sure that they match up. If one is way bigger than the other, you may have to make your other pinch pot bigger to match or make one smaller. So now I have this seam that's going along the edge here. I need to get rid of that. So a good tool to use for that would be my rib tool. I'm just going to gently pull my clay together. And I'm going to go around the whole piece doing this. And it might look kind of weird at first, but the more you smooth it out, the better it's going to look. Okay, so when you're done slipping and scoring and putting your pinch pots together, it should kind of look like a gray rock or a baked potato. That means you're doing it right. It's not going to look like something until you make the attachments for it. Now, this is a circle right now, so if I were doing a shape like maybe an emoji or a basketball, this would be pretty good. If I'm doing something that's more oval, I may have to shape this a little bit on the table. You can gently press to get the shape you want. If you press too hard, you're going to cause cracks in your piece. So just be gentle when you're doing this. And once you have your pinch pots into a closed form, the last thing you would do for the day is put an exit hole in the bottom of your piece. If you don't put an exit hole in your piece, when we go to fire these in the kiln, there's a chance that they could explode because there's nowhere for the air to go. So we always want to make sure. I just use the bottom of a paintbrush to do this, and I just gently poked a hole in the bottom of my piece where nobody's going to see it. I'm also going to carve my initials into the bottom of this because at the beginning of the project, all your pieces are going to look similar. So you want to make sure that you know it's yours. Now, one more thing, when you go to clean up for the day, you want to put just maybe 1 or 2 drops of slip on your piece. And then I'm going to give you each a plastic bag that you're going to gently drape over your piece to keep it airtight. If this is exposed to the air overnight, there's a chance that it could dry out and you won't be able to use it anymore for the project. But this is the first kind of beginning steps on how to set up a pinch pot. And we'll get more into attachments and details later on. Thank you.